Archaic Records.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Archaic Records here with you again. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. And I will be taking care of you this afternoon on a trip back to 1982 and 1983, respectively, as we take a look at the only two albums by American New Wavers, the Waitresses. Now, the Waitresses were formed in Akron, Ohio in 1978 by guitarist and bandleader Chris Butler and vocalist Patty Donahue. In 1982, the band would release its first full-length studio album, Wasn't Tomorrow Wonderful? And a year later, in 1983, the band would release its second and final album, Bruiseology. Now, of course, the Waitresses are most well known for their early 80s MTV hit, I Know What Boys Like. And I think for a lot of people, this is one of those bands that sort of gets filed away as another one of those early 80s one-hit wonders. But that is a relegation that I sort of take exception with. I generally don't necessarily agree with that definition when it comes to the term one-hit wonder. Now, you have to concede that the Waitresses really only had one breakthrough song that sort of made a splash on MTV and commercial radio back in the 1980s. But when I think of a one-hit wonder, what my sort of personal definition of a one-hit wonder is an artist that literally has like one good song. To me, case in point would be a band like D-Light. If you go back to the early 1990s and you listen to their song Groove is in the Heart, which is one of the greatest songs of its era, a song that I never get tired of. But if you go back and you listen to the rest of D-Light's catalog, you quickly realize that Groove is in the Heart was the only good song that band ever did. The rest of that catalog is gnarly, my friends. Now, I realize my best friend Tim out in California is going to love that analogy because he is a huge D-Light fan. But the truth is, man, Groove is in the Heart is the only good song that band ever did. So in my opinion, a band like D-Light is somebody that I would sort of categorize as a one-hit wonder. Now, I'm not dismissing them as a one-hit wonder because Groove is in the Heart is a great song and it's nothing that I could ever come up with. But in the case of a band like the Waitresses, who only put out 2 albums and they were only together for 5 years, this is a band that in their very condensed catalog and very short career, this is a band that actually put out quite a few, if not several, memorable tracks. Now, my personal relationship with this band, of course, goes back to hearing the song I Know What Boys Like, either on MTV as a young kid or perhaps on the radio. And it was a song that I've always liked. I've always thought that the video was very cool. Now, this is a song that is very much sort of a product of its time and that first sort of incarnation of MTV. But that being said, I think that is a song that still holds up to this day, and it's one of those songs that I never really ever get tired of. I was talking about this same thing when I was talking about the Vapors about a month ago on this channel. You know, the song Turning Japanese is a song that has sort of relegated them into that kind of one-hit wonder status. That's another band I totally disagree with the one-hit wonder status on. But I never get tired of it. I never get tired of hearing the song Turning Japanese, and I really never get tired of hearing the song I Know What Boys Like. And I remember the first time I actually owned a copy of that song, it was probably back in the early 1990s. I think I've talked about it on this channel in the past. How right around the time I started getting into kind of punk rock and post-punk and new wave music, there was a collection of CDs that were being released at that point in time called Living in Oblivion, and those were CDs that I lived for. Get it? But every time the new Living in Oblivion CD would come out, it was something that I would just purchase immediately because it had all of these, tracks by these bands from, maybe a generation before I was really listening to music. And you could go through and you could get the songs that were the most memorable. And then if you liked the song enough, you could go back and you could actually buy some of the CDs, which is usually what I did. I would go back and I would buy one of those Living in Oblivion CDs. I would go through it. I'd listen to the songs I liked. And if I liked it enough, I'd make it a point to go out and listen to the CDs. Now, I remember the first time I bought this album on CD, it was in a used record store in my hometown. Actually, I think it was in the Bay Area the first time I bought this CD. And it was in one of those used bins where it was like $1 or maybe $2. And I remember liking the song, I Know What Boys Like, when I had it on the Living in Oblivion CDs, but it wasn't necessarily one of those where I was like, all right, I have to make a point that I'm going to run out and buy this album. But, having found it for, a couple of bones on clearance, I was totally all on board with that. If nothing else, if it's a total bust, at least you've got the album art, and it's probably something you could sell down the road if it, didn't end up tickling your fancy. But I ended up, buying this record. I took it home and listened to it, and it's a record that actually really kind of surprised me. I didn't have a ton of expectations when it came to this first record, the first time I listened to it all the way through. Because, I do like the song, I Know What Boys Like, excuse me. But, you could also see, now I don't necessarily see it this way, but I've heard people describe that song as being kind of a novelty or sort of a kind of a comedy track. I don't necessarily see it that way. But yeah, if the whole album was sort of, in that same exact vein, I could see it growing tiresome. But the thing I like about this record is it goes in like a ton of different directions. A lot of the songwriting is actually really good. There's a lot of different influences on here. They do songs that are basically like straightforward new wave. They do a lot of post-punk, and what is actually some of my favorite stuff on this record is a lot of the kind of two-tone influence that's really peppered, throughout this entire record. The first record. And, my favorite thing about this record in particular, and of the two, this is easily my favorite. I actually listen to this record a fair amount. I don't listen to it all the time. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, but I do listen to this record a fair amount. But one of my favorite things about this band, especially on the first record, is I love Patty Donahue's voice. And more than her voice, what I love about her is I love just her attitude. She's got this like real snotty, bratty 80s Valley Girl kind of vibe going on that really is just unique to her, and I think unique to this record, even unique to this record within the band's catalog. And there's just something about the way she delivers these songs that it's very enticing. There was something about Valley Girls in the 1980s. If you grew up in the 1980s, Valley Girls were sort of this thing, but they were also usually like the coolest girls in your middle school or your high school. I'm probably not I was in high school when this record came out, but Valley Girls were sort of portrayed as being like the cool girls in school. They were like the hot girls. And I remember I had a friend growing up. Well, we weren't necessarily super close friends, but our parents were friends, so he and I were sort of forced to hang out, sometimes, even though he and I didn't necessarily really get along with each other. And I think I was a total nerd growing up, and he was kind of a cool kid, so I think he was kind of embarrassed to know me, especially when we would see each other at school. If we were hanging out with our parents, and there weren't any other kids from our school around, it was cool, but if I ever saw him at school, he acted like he didn't know me. And but he had an older sister, and his older sister, to me, was just like the coolest person that I'd ever met, at least at that point in my life. And she was kind of I think she was kind of like in middle school while we were in, grammar school. And I remember she was kind of like a Valley Girl-ish. She kind of had this like Valley Girl vibe about her. And I remember one time he and I ended up in her bedroom, and I'm not even sure how we ended up in there. I think we were looking for something, or maybe we were just being snoops. I don't know. But I remember the first time I was in like a teenage girl's bedroom. Man, it was like being in the land of Oz. It was like this foreign place, and I didn't really feel totally comfortable, but it was new. I knew it was something that I liked. And it kind of reminds me of Patty Donahue when it comes to her sort of brattiness and her snottiness and her vocal delivery. To me, that is really one of the high points of this band's sound, apart from the fact that they really sort of experimented in a lot of different directions. They go in a lot of different directions. They take a lot of different influences. And really, I think, instrumentally, I think most of the band, most of the players in this band were really remarkable, musicians. The first song on this record is a song called No Guilt, which is one of my favorite songs on the record. This one has like a real sort of two-tone ska selector kind of feel to it. This is like the perfect breakup revenge song. This is like if you run into your ex, while you're out shopping, you feel good, you look good, you're in good shape, your self-esteem is high, the sun is hitting you just at the right angle, and he asked, oh, how are things going? And you can imagine Patty Donahue saying, oh, I'm going about my business, actually, I'm thriving. I'm pursuing my interests. I'm chasing my dreams. I'm meeting interesting people. Do you know that I know a guy who met John Belushi one time? And that's the one thing I don't understand necessarily. Maybe it's like a generational thing. But in this song, it makes a big point that she knows a guy who met John Belushi. Now, maybe it's my age. Because I was a little bit younger than the first wave of Saturday Night Live people. But John Belushi, to me, it's kind of like a generational thing. I've never really understood why people were so, obsessed with John Belushi. I mean, he was okay on Saturday Night Live, and I like the Blues Brothers enough. And Animal House, honestly, to me, Animal House just isn't really that funny. Every time I watch that movie, I kind of wait for the funny parts to start. That movie can't touch Revenge of the Nerds, son. So I guess it's like a generational thing. The whole John Belushi thing is like a generational thing. But she makes it a whole point to say, hey, I know this guy. He met John Belushi. And I like how the song talks about, hey, I'm not going to apologize that this didn't break me. I am not suicidal over you. It turns out, in fact, that I can live without you, and my life is actually better than it was when you were strapped to my coattails, Jack. I love this song. And again, I just talked about this at the beginning with her and her delivery, this snotty, bratty, spoiled, valley girl kind of affect on her voice. It just fits this song perfectly. This is a way better song than I Know What Boys Like. And I know that I Know What Boys Like is kind of a novelty anyway, but this is a way better song. This should have been a bigger hit than I Know What Boys Like every day of the week. I love this song. It kind of makes you feel good, if you've been through sort of a bad breakup. It's one thing to go through a breakup and, sit in your room and dwell on it and drink whiskey and listen to Morrissey and Hank Williams. It's another thing to go out and do what this chick does and go out and thrive and, see that your life is just beginning when this fucking idiot walks out of your life. The next song after that is a song called Wise Up. This song has a kind of a big, epic sort of, I don't know if you've seen the movie Warriors, but it kind of has a big Warriors soundtrack kind of feel to it. This song starts off sort of weird. It starts off sort of reciting the Robert's Rules of Order. And then from there it kind of goes into sort of just a bunch of kind of cliches that suburban parents would sort of spew out at their kind of teenage daughter who's not acting appropriately. This song is okay. It's not necessarily one of my favorite songs on the record, but it's not bad. The third song after that is a song called Quit. I really like this song to a point. There's things about this song I like. There's things about this song I don't like. This song has a cool new wave meets X-Ray Specs kind of feel to it. I love that. Now, I'm not necessarily always the hugest fan of, saxophone. But the way that the saxophone is used in this band, I actually kind of like. It does remind me of kind of X-Ray Specs, who are one of the greatest punk rock bands of all time. And I'm not just saying that because they have female vocalists, so stop. But this song is anxiety-soaked. It's kind of like the inner dialogue of somebody who, I get the feeling they're sort of struggling with a task. And in this side of their brain, they're urging themselves to no, push on. You got to figure this out. We can do it. We just have to, figure it out, and we can do it, and it'll be done, and it'll be. And then on this half of the brain, nah, quit. It's not worth it. F this. I didn't make this mess. Why do I have to clean it up? But it's very anxiety-ridden. It's sort of the music in this song is a little bit chaotic, which kind of contributes to that feeling of kind of stress that this song, I think, is sort of trying to, convey, I should say, sorry. But one thing I don't like about this song is it's just too wordy, man, lyrically. It's just ba 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 ba. And if you read the lyrics to this song, I mean, it's like reading a novel. I mean, if I want to read a novel, I got no problem reading Moby Dick, the greatest book ever written. But if I want to listen to a 3-minute long pop song, I don't need all of this. And to me, this song just like does not breathe. It's just too wordy over and over. And in this song in particular, and even though I love Patty Donahue and her voice and her cadence and her attitude, there's something about her cadence on this song in particular that's kind of off of the rhythm, and I'm sure it's done on purpose. I'm not pretending as if it was done by mistake, but it just kind of, I guess it sort of is effective in the sense that it adds to the sort of stressfulness of the situation, but it sort of grows tiresome after a little while, and so to me, this song, it just, instrumentally, I love this song, and I love the sort of lyrics to a point, but it's just too much. When it comes to songwriting, and this is just my opinion, and I am not an expert, I've written exactly 0 songs in my life. So I say this as a rank amateur. But sometimes when it comes to songs, at least in my opinion, sometimes it's what you don't say that works as much as what you do say. And this song is, lyrically, this song is like 6 inches long. And it's just like too much. This song has no chance to breathe at all. I like it, but it's not my favorite, I guess is my long-winded way of saying that. The next song after that is one of my favorite songs on this record. Again, this has got like a real two-tone ska, kind of actually specifically kind of a One Step Beyond by Madness kind of feel to it. This song is sort of about, the conversation between a person driving and a sort of nitpicky backseat driver. I am capable very much of being a backseat driver. I wouldn't be so much a backseat driver if I wasn't always riding around in cars with people that are questionable drivers. Now, my wife, who I love more than anything in the world, and I am loyal to forever. That being said, though, she is not, in my opinion, necessarily the world's best driver. And it's not so much that she's a bad driver when she's paying attention to what she's doing. And she's sort of focusing on the gray pavement in between the lines in front of her. What worries me is the fact that she's always distracted when she's driving, which is something that I never do. Now, I'm not Jesus Christ on the cross here. I have enough issues of my own. But she's always like got Facebook going, and she's always texting people. And I know that when I'm not in the car with her, it's even worse, because when I'm in the car with her, I have a tendency to be the backseat driver. I'm like, hey, do you have to be filing your taxes right now? We're doing 80 on the interstate. But I know when I'm not in the car with her, I know she's got like a meal going, and she's got some Facebooking going on, and she's got her little screen with her music where she's trying to find the right song. And it's just something that has always created a tremendous amount of anxiety in my life. I am convinced that I am going to die in a car accident. I was actually supposed to die in a car accident when I was 5 years old. Somehow I managed to survive that. But in the spirit of that sort of Final Destination film series, I know eventually I'm going to die in a car accident. It's just something I've been aware of ever since I was a little kid. It's kind of hard to explain over the course of a 30-minute YouTube video, but it's just something, trust me, if you ever read that I've passed on, most likely it's going to be in a car accident. But if and when it happens, I would like it to be something that is at least avoidable, not because somebody is in the middle of updating their Facebook status while they're trying to change lanes. So me and my wife have this sort of conflict all the time, because she is convinced, as everybody else is, as I am too, that she is a great driver, and I am being a butt when I am sort of, giving her I guess it's criticism. It's constructive criticism, because I want her to live to see another day. I don't want her to sort of pass away because she's otherwise occupied. Now, when I get in my car, I find my music I want, and my phone goes right in my pocket. And again, I have a lot of flaws, my friends. I'm not pretending as if I'm perfect. But driving distracted is something that it really scares me. I also used to have this girlfriend a long time ago. Now, she was genuinely a terrible driver. My wife now, she's an okay driver when she's paying attention. It's the getting her to pay attention that's the challenge. But I had this girlfriend, and man, she was the worst driver I've ever ridden with, ever. I mean, she was scary. I mean, it was white knuckles city just to go down to the Kroger for a gallon of milk. That being said, though, she was the best parallel parker I've ever met in my life. She could parallel park in a space that big perfectly. But otherwise, her driving, oh my God. I love this song, though. Like I said, it's got like a real kind of madness, one step beyond. It's sort of this conversation between a driver and a backseat driver who are not necessarily getting along. Now, you can ask yourself, and you may be asking me, hey, if you don't like the way your wife drives, why don't you drive when the two of you are out about town? And I would agree with that, but my wife doesn't like my driving either. Not to mention the fact that the AC in my car just died, and it's summer in Nashville, so it's not super pleasant anyway. The next song after that is the title track, which closes out side one. Wasn't Tomorrow Wonderful? This song has kind of a bouncy, poppy sort of Adam and the Ants feel to it. To me, this is a song that is about I think of it as being two girlfriends. One of them comes over to the other one's house frustrated and sort of feeling disenfranchised with the singles scene in their particular town, Akron, Ohio, in this case. And basically, you're basically trying to build up your friend and say, hey, there's a lot of fish in the sea. You keep dating these losers. You're better than that. Have a little bit of self-esteem. Maybe take some time off. Get to know you a little bit better. You don't always have to be, hitched onto somebody else's arm. Side two starts off with a song called I Know That's What Boys Like. I Know What Boys Like. Of course, this is the band's biggest hit. I will not say only hit because, as I mentioned before, this is a band that I think has a lot of good music in their relatively small catalog. Of course, this is a huge, iconic hit from the early 1980s. It feels very like 1980s, but that being said, I think it still holds up today. I think the thing that makes this song so brilliant, and again, I'm going back to this sort of same, topic or the same, theme, is that, Patty Donahue's vocals and her performance and her bratty, snotty, Valley Girl sort of delivery in the song makes it a perfect pop song. This song is actually, kind of hot. It's kind of sexy because she's got this attitude. She's got this confidence. And like I said, when I was growing up, it was girls like this that were kind of like intimidating. These were like the it girls. When I was in grammar school and middle school, you wanted to be around these girls that had this like shit-eating attitude. Like they walked on water. That's one of the best things about this song is its attitude. I like I said before, some people have said, though, this song is a novelty. It's almost like a comedy track, which it isn't at all. It's just like brilliant. It's just perfect. It's like a perfect little pop song. It doesn't change your life, but when you listen to it, it's no wonder that this song has stood the test of time for 40 years. The next song after that is a song called Night Heat. This one is a real sort of poppy post-punk kind of vibe. This is a great song. This is a song about a girl that is purposely going out to pick up some dude and just kind of maybe get a little bit of, loving. Why not? I like this song because it sort of flips the script, on, hey, why isn't it okay for a woman just to go out just to get some? I mean, that's 85% of any reason why a guy leaves the house is because there's a possibility that he could end up in somebody's bed. I mean, that's the whole reason why most of us get up in the morning. So why not flip the script and say, hey, it's okay for a woman to go out there and chase a little pole when she's feeling frisky. There's nothing wrong with that. I love the message in this song. And again, I'll say it again, because of her attitude and her sort of sexiness and her cockiness in her delivery, it just works. It makes the song sexy. It makes the song hot. You want to know this girl. You want this girl to like go out and get some. I like how she talks about in this song how, hey, I used to be sort of like the shy girl, but that didn't get me anywhere. I want to go out. I want to get a little male poon, if that's okay with you. The next song after that is a song called Redland. Probably my favorite song on the entire record. This and No Guilt are probably my two favorite songs on the record. This is a very sort of two-tone ska influence, Selector madness kind of vibe to it. This is a Cold War piece. This is sort of like the movie Red Dawn set to, ska, except for the fact that throughout the course of the song, you're sort of rooting for the Russians, the invading Russians. And of course, that was a big thing in the 1980s with the Cold War. And even as a kid, you sort of learned that Russians were just automatically the bad guys. If you go back and watch our movies in the 80s, in 95% of the movies of the 1980s, Russians were the bad guys. It was either a guy with a hockey mask or a Russian. And it was something that we were very much sort of learned to believe that Russians were just automatically evil. And of course, one of the greatest movies of all time is the original Red Dawn from the 1980s. Still one of my favorite movies ever. But this movie this song, I should say, sort of takes the approach that, yeah, that'd be cool. I could change towns without moving. We'd have a new history. We'd have new heroes. I might look kind of snug in one of those little uniforms. We would have new folklore. And, we're kind of bored of, the United States anyway. So, hey, if somebody comes in and takes it over, it wouldn't be so bad. I really love this song. It's a total flip of the script of stuff that you would normally hear when it comes to that sort of 80s Cold War propaganda. This is one of my favorite songs on the record, easily. The next song after that is a song called Pussy Strut. A song that you probably couldn't get away with in 2024 because apparently now we are no longer allowed to say the word pussy. And I remember I used to love to say the word pussy. Saying the word pussy always felt good. Whether you were referring to a part of the woman's anatomy as a pussy, or if you were referring to one of your friends as a pussy because he was doing something that you thought was weak or uncool. For some reason now you're not allowed to say the word pussy, and I really miss saying the word pussy, and this song kind of uses the word as sort of as a term of empowerment, almost, is what I'm trying to say. This song is basically about the science of attraction. It's very sexy. I find this song to be, her voice and her delivery and her sort of cadence on this song to be sort of irresistible. That was the thing. Again, I keep saying this, but you go back and you listen to these songs, her attitude, especially on this first record, there's just something about her attitude that is very irresistible. It's very enticing. The next song after that is a song called Go On. This song has a real sort of Vapors, jammy kind of vibe to it. This song is talking about a woman who is always finding the wrong dude. She talks about the fact that she likes to chase money. But she ends up always finding guys who are obsessive, crazy, abusive, codependent, or just plain betas. And basically she decides that she's going to take some time off, get away from men, stop ending up in these relationships that are either just totally unsatisfactory or in some cases, almost dangerous. The last song on this record is a song called Jimmy Tomorrow. Again, I said this about the song Quit. I will say this about the song Jimmy Tomorrow, is this song is just too wordy. This is another one of those songs that's got 8 inches of lyrics that don't really say that just aren't necessary. It doesn't really say as much as it would say if you sort of just let the song breathe a little bit. There's way too many vocals on this track. The song is about setting fantastical goals and, solving some of the world's problems. It talks about one thing that's funny and sort of ironic in a sad way if you think about what happened to this band after or certain members of this band after the band broke up, was it asks, have you found a cure for hunger? And her answer is black coffee and cigarettes. This song is okay. I would put it up there with Quit as probably one of my two weakest songs on the record. It's just, this song does not allow to breathe. It's got kind of a cool post-punk kind of vibe to it. But again, Chris Butler, one thing about some of his songwriting is he writes these novels, man. And sometimes you don't need that many words. Like I said before, trim the fat a little bit. You just end up talking over yourself, something you're probably thinking of me right now. Thanks a lot. Anyway, year after that, in May of 1983, the band would release its second and final album, Bruiseology. Now, this is an album that is a lot different from the first album, and when I say a lot different, I don't necessarily mean that as a compliment. This album was produced by Chris Butler. And a couple things are well known about this album before we even get into what I think. Well-known facts about this album are that the band were really going through a lot of internal strife during the recording of this process, or during the recording process of this record. It's well known that the band almost broke up before this record even came into fruition. It was thought of that by the band that they would sort of record this record in order to sort of, rejuvenate their feelings towards the band and perhaps each other. But to me, that's something that never really works out. The analogy I think of is the couple who has a kid in order to save their marriage, and the kid ends up suffering. And in my opinion, this record ends up suffering because although this record is okay, it is definitely a far cry from Wasn't Tomorrow Wonderful. And to me, this is a record, Wasn't Tomorrow Wonderful. If you're a fan of post-punk, new wave, punk rock, to me, that record is an essential. It's a record that I will always have in my catalog. But as far as Bruiseology goes, this is a record that I keep mostly just as a library piece. I don't go back and listen to it very often. I've been listening to it a lot this past week, trying to sit down and find some good things to say about it. But this is a record that I get the sense that they were really trying to sort of streamline their sound in order to make themselves more sort of commercially viable. And it just ended up killing, at least in my opinion, all of the character that this band had. This album to me is sort of generic. It all musically kind of sounds the same, and really what they ended up doing was, I think they basically ended up kind of neutering themselves when they tried to sort of make themselves into something that they weren't, because this record, although it does have a few good songs on it, I think generally speaking, is a record that, it's for people like me who are record nerds who collect everything they can get their hands on to hold on to. I don't know that this record is necessarily essential. I've been listening to it this week, and having listened to it 3 or 4 times this week, I don't know that I'll be in a hurry to throw it back on anytime soon. To me, this record gets kind of bland. The songwriting is a lot less interesting. And sadly, where I think this record fails the most is in Patty Donahue's vocals. Now, what they did on this record, I feel like, was they sort of transitioned her into more of a traditional vocalist. And that's fine and good in the sense that I like her voice. She has a good voice. She has a good singing voice. But what she lost in translation is she lost that attitude. She lost what made her unique. And to me, she just sort of sounds as bland and generic on this record as the band does. And like I said, there's a few good songs on this record. But to me, a lot of it is not even bad. Honestly, to say it's bad is not even accurate. It's just, more of it's just sadly kind of forgettable. Anyway, the first song on this record is a song called A Girl's Gotta Do. This song has a pretty generic kind of 1983 kind of new wave sound to it. This song is about the struggle for a woman to be taken seriously. it talks about society's fear and discomfort when it comes to the presence of a strong woman, all of which I agree. I'm all on board with the subject matter, but it has this sort of kind of annoyingly repetitive chorus, and the song to me is okay. I get what they're saying. I really like the lyrics in terms of the message, but this is a song here where I feel like the old Patty Donahue with the attitude and the brattiness would have made this song pop, whereas to me this song just kind of sits there like a house plant that you haven't watered in the past 2 months. Actually, you should water our plants tonight. The next song after that is Make the Weather. This song has kind of a neutered sound of the Waitresses off their first album. It sounds like the Waitresses on their first album, but without any of like the edge or personality. I do love her voice on this song. It's got a real straightforward delivery without any of her sort of uniqueness, but her voice sounds incredible on this song. To me, the song is sort of about technology and kind of where is the moral ceiling within technology. I think it's sort of a prophetic song to listen to in 2024. Of course, in this song, basically the technology is trying to play God by creating weather, and and it's semi-interesting. Like I said, I think the high point of the song is about her voice. I am somebody who is very, although I use technology a fair amount, I'm not saying that I don't. I'm somebody who is distrustful of technology, especially when it sort of goes into things like AI and sort of playing God, if you will, which I think is kind of like, when they're talking about making weather, I think that's the analogy, is that you're playing God with technology. That's the way I interpret it. I always say on this channel, I'm not saying that this is what it means. I'm just saying that this is how I see it. This is kind of what it means to me. The next song on this album is a song called Everything's Wrong If My Hair Is Wrong. The song is, instrumentally, this song is actually pretty cool. It's one of the more interesting songs on the record, instrumentally. It's got kind of a X-Ray Specs, Wall of Voodoo, B-52s kind of vibe to it. Basically, the song is about a girl who's getting ready to go out on the town, and everything is just, right. She's got the right purse, she's got the right dress, her makeup is looking snug. But man, she's got one hair out of place, and the whole world is going to come to an end. One thing about Chris Butler as a songwriter, I've heard and read that he has been criticized in the past for writing these songs in the sort of perspective of a woman, and the fact that he tends to create these women characters that are very sort of shallow and superficial. I would make the argument that that is the case on the song Everything's Wrong If My Hair Is Wrong, because he does sort of paint this caricature of what a woman, is sort of like if, one little thing goes wrong. This song also has a wonky chorus. I don't like the chorus on this song at all. But at the same time, every guy can relate to, getting ready to go out. You've been dressed for like a week and your chick is still upstairs, manipulating every little, facet of her look. And, it's funny, interesting. I find this interesting that the song You Look Wonderful Tonight by Eric Clapton. Now, I'm not necessarily the biggest Eric Clapton fan in the world. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. But he wrote the song Are You Wonderful Tonight, which is one of the nicest little love songs of all time. Apparently, he wrote that song in like 10 minutes, sitting around the piano when his wife was getting ready to go out. Now, that's not what I do when my wife is upstairs getting ready to go out. I'm not writing tracks that sell millions and millions of copies. I'm usually sitting at home. I'm sitting downstairs watching old reruns of That's My Mama, which is a better use of your time than listening to Eric Clapton, I must say. But my wife is one of those women who takes an eternity to get ready, which it's always worth the wait. But by the time she comes downstairs and asks how she looks, I've been ready to go for about a month and a half, and it wouldn't matter if she came down wearing a potato sack. I would tell her that it looked snug, and I was ready to go. But she always looks snug. Who am I lying to? The next song after that is a song called Luxury. This song instrumentally is just kind of a mess, honestly. It's just a lot going on. It's very chaotic. It does have one of those big signature sort of cheese 80s saxophone sort of, solos. I'm kind of weird when it comes to saxophone. Too much is too much, and sometimes when it comes to the Waitresses, especially on the second album, which I'm not necessarily the hugest fan of. I mean, the saxophone is sort of like, oh my god. Musically, it's kind of murky. This song is about staying in a relationship that is unsatisfying because, the guy's rich. He takes her to, exotic places. You eat foreign food. She's basically, a gold digger. Again, I talked about this with the last song. Everything's wrong if my hair's not right. That, he's sort of creating, again, this is one of those songs that Chris Butler's been criticized for because he's writing this song as a female character who's very sort of superficial and very sort of styrofoam. And, is she sympathetic because she's so unhappy? I don't know. I don't think that I think the character in the song sees herself as being sympathetic, even though she has all of these sort of, really kind of nasty traits of being a gold digger and chasing around money and, going to, Milan with some guy that she doesn't like. The next song after that closes out side one is a song called Open City. This one has kind of an up-tempo, almost like soulful post-punk feel. Is that a thing? Post-punk soul? If it is, I would throw that into this category. It probably is. There's so many subgenres and subcategories that it probably is. This song is awesome, though. This is probably one of my favorite songs on the record, actually. This song is sort of about a post-capitalistic financial apocalypse. It talks about how people are burning money, and they're playing music in the streets, and people are dancing, and they're doing murals, and basically they create this sort of artisan utopia after the collapse of capitalism. Actually, I really like this song a lot. I like the message in this song a lot. Not that I'm an anti-capitalist necessarily, but I really like this song. It's very romantic. It's very kind of sci-fi. It feels very like sort of 1983, especially if you were living in Ronald Reagan America back in those days. The first song on side 2 is a song called Thinking About Sex Again. Something that I can relate to from time to time. Not as much as I did back in my 20s, but something I can think about or relate to from time to time. This song is pretty self-explanatory, really. It starts off talking about, the self-consciousness of inexperience, and then, the confidence that you gain with practice. This is a song that I actually really like a lot. It talks about, the concept of, casual sex versus sex in a relationship. I think this song is pretty good. It's not necessarily one of my favorite songs of all time. But, on this record, the pickings are a little slim on some of these songs, so it's a better song. The next song after that is a song called Bruiseology, which is the title track. This is a song, to me, this song is about the psychology of being a victim of domestic violence. The song talks about shame, rationale, self-blame, and protecting your perpetrator. This is something that I do have, unfortunately, I have a fair amount of first-hand experience with, and I think the song is very well written. I almost wonder if Chris Butler had been in a situation of domestic violence, because I feel like this song is pretty astute and pretty accurate as to what it feels like to be the victim of sort of domestic violence. I remember one time I was in a situation where I was a victim of domestic violence, and I had to go to a sort of a victims awareness class, which was like an 8-hour Saturday thing, because my ex had been arrested, and in order to not press charges on her, I had to go take this class, and then I had to pass a test, and then after that I had to do a one-on-one meeting with a counselor who then would allow me to either go ahead with pressing charges or dismiss the charges. And I remember when I first went into this class, of course, because I have a tendency to know everything always, I went in there with my arms very much folded. I didn't want to hear anything that was being said. To be perfectly honest with you, I was sort of upset that I was missing 8 hours of work on a Saturday. And I wasn't planning on pressing charges. And I remember looking around the room, and I was the only guy that was in the room. The rest were all women. And it was sort of a weird feeling, I'm not going to lie to you. But as the day went on, I began to hear things that resonated with me. And by the end of the day, because even my granite forehead can sometimes absorb information and my mind can be changed, I was actually very sort of grateful for the experience, and I felt as if I learned a lot. And I did learn that there was this whole psychology sort of behind being the victim of domestic violence. And I remember I went in to talk to the counselor in my one-on-one after the class, and I told her, I was like, man, it's so weird. I was the only guy in here. All these women, and, I was in here. Honestly, it felt kind of shitty, to be honest with you. And I sort of wrongly expected my counselor to kind of have this, like, man-hating attitude, which was unfair of me to think that. Totally. I could totally admit that. But that was just what I thought. But what she told me was, she said, and my ex had a history, a pretty ugly history of things. I'm not going to go into all of the details because she is somebody that I have no hard feelings towards. But I'll just say this, that she stabbed the guy before me. And I didn't know that until I was in this one-on-one, because they showed me her past arrest records. And the lady told me, she's like, hey, this is becoming a pretty big pattern, and sometimes with women it becomes more dangerous because women feel as if they can get away with it because there is this stigma that they are always the victims. And so I was urged by this woman to end up pressing charges on my ex, which of course I didn't. But it reminds me of that when you kind of go into a situation and you actually learn things and people are pointing things out to you, and if you're willing to open your eyes and open your mind and say, oh yeah, that's what she does that. We do that. I do that. I totally make excuses. I'm a total enabler. The next song after that is a song called Pleasure. This is just kind of a fun instrumental. It's fine. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's sort of a watered down instrumental version of what the Waitresses sounded like a year before. The next song after that is a song called Spin, and whew, man. There are a couple songs on this record that I would nominate as being my favorite. This is the least, son. I don't like this song at all. So instead of sitting here and being negative, which is not what this channel is all about at all, I'll just tell you that the last song on this record is a song called They're All Out of Liquor, Let's Find Another Party. This song has like a real awesome kind of driving, clean, crisp, post-punk vibe to it. This is another one of the songs that is one of my favorites. So this is probably actually my favorite song on the record. And the thing about this song that's so cool is you get back to the old school traditional Patty Donahue delivery on this song. This is what this album has been missing. One of the things this album has been missing, because she is bratty and snotty, and Valley Girl is all get out on this song, and this song rules. This song is basically about rejecting life's normal path. Getting married, making babies, buying a house in the suburbs. This is about, no, go out and live your life. Go to Paris. Go to, write the great American novel. Travel. Live for yourself. Don't necessarily live according to the narration of normalcy that is sort of spewed onto you by other people. Don't live according to other people's expectations. This song, I love the messaging in this song. I've kind of can sort of relate to this song in a way. But this is easily one of the best songs, probably the best song on the record. A record that I would argue is maybe just on the sort of plus side of sort of mediocrity, at least in my opinion. And the first record, just a year before, was so much better. Wasn't Tomorrow Wonderful was such a good record. This is a record that if you, like I said before, if you like post-punk, new wave, I mean, that's an essential. To me, Bruiseology is a record that you kind of got to be a person like me to want to buy this record, because you kind of have to be a diehard. You sort of have to be that guy who just buys every record, because this record, like I said, I've been listening to it all week, trying to get some ideas about it, trying to find some positive things to say about it, because this record does have some positives. I mean, that last song, they're out of liquor, let's go find another party. I mean, that song is awesome. So it's got its moments, but all in all, if I were you and you were only had time to go back and listen to one, it would definitely be Wasn't Tomorrow Wonderful. The band broke up not long after this record came out. I guess the baby didn't save the marriage after all. I know, it's so rare when that happens. Usually the baby makes everything so much less complicated and better, son. Sadly, in 1996, singer Patty Donahue passed away at the age of 40 from lung cancer. And I saw an interview with somebody who was in the band one time. It was after she passed away, and they said, well, Patty was always kind of a heavy smoker. And let me just tell you this, unless she had some sort of, condition that was sort of, pre-existing or anything like that. I mean, I've been around some chimneys in my day. And if you pass away from lung cancer at the age of 40, you were doing some fucking puffing, son. Anyway, go back and check out these two records by the Waitresses. I don't think that you'll be disappointed, especially the first one, Wasn't Tomorrow Wonderful. The second record, Bruiseology, you might have to be a little bit more of a hardcore for, but it doesn't ever hurt you to go back and listen to music. It's like going to the gym, right? You go to the gym, you never leave the gym going, man, I wish I didn't do that. You eat a cheeseburger, you go out and have some beers. It's full of regret, but you never go to the gym and think, I wish I didn't do that. Go listen to a record. It's a decent record. You got nothing to regret. Unless you die halfway through it, and that's the last thing you ever hear. I don't know if I'd recommend that. Anyway, man, thank you so much for checking out this video. This is Archaic Records. My name is Jamie, coming at you from Nashville, Tennessee. Be sure to go out and support your local record store. Check back most weeks for Morrissey Monday, a weekly celebration of all things Morrissey and the Smiths, as well as other record content and album reviews throughout the week. And until next time, my friends, talk to you then.